Hey guys, I have this app that I call Shows that lets me track the shows that I'm watching, have finished watching, and wants to watch. So here I have this JSON file that contains, first of all, the name of the show that I'm watching, how many episodes I have downloaded, if I do download it, some stuff I don't, but it still has it for ease of use, then how many episodes I have watched, the link to the place where I watch it, and combined with the episode, it can actually provide you the full link, so you can just go and watch it with a command, and then the timestamp of the last change. So, more specifically, the last episode change. So, I watched the episode 751 at this time. And I can also finish shows via commands, and they go to consumed with, once again, the date and the name. And if I dropped it, instead of finishing it fully, I say it's dropped. So basically a lot of things that let me track my shows more easily. However, I am now looking at the code. I was trying to change some things and I realized that it's kind of confusing to work with and overall kind of annoying. So what I want to do in this video is go through the process of refactoring it, finding some changes, maybe making it look a bit nicer and so on. So stuff like that. So today's video is going to be, I guess, more like a stream, but it's just a video. Yeah, instead of something more concrete. I hope it's going to be interesting as well. So first of all, I use lowercase for keywords now. Class shows, and they use instances. Why? Because let's go to the runner where I usually use it. So by having instances, we can do multiple different things at once rather than having to use static things. However, what do I even... So let's actually search for this and see what I even have as instance variables and whether it actually makes sense for shows to be non-static. So right now we're just seeing shows in terms of fields that are non-static. And we have yet to see anything else rather than shows. The reason why I don't count methods is because they don't really matter. Because you can just make them static. It's just that instance variables and static variables are different in nature and how they operate. So it seems like I don't actually need to have this class as a non-static class. I can instead make it static. Why? Well, first of all, what I essentially want to do is basically, instead of we read this JSON file when we reload the script and then it's just that static. So instead of that, I want to reread this file every time that we create a new instance of the shows class. So there are two things that I'm immediately thinking of. First of all, what if instead we make shows a property that has a getter and setter, I guess. Yeah. Ooh, that's actually a good idea, because first of all we have the getter that does this entire thing, and then also a setter. So when we change the objects of shows, it also automatically applies those changes. So that seems pretty damn good. However, I know that the JSON implementation that I'm using is kinda inconsistent. in how fast you can write to files. So let's experiment so far, whether we should be doing that or not. So let's create shows, but now it's static. Shows, and VS Code is surprisingly slow right now. So yeah, there's the idea of having a property. The negative of it is the fact that it will reread the file every single time that we access it. It might not matter, but it might actually matter, and we won't know until we will. The other thought that I had on my mind about this, actually something that I forgot. So let's go with the property approach in this case. So when we read our JSON file, we don't really do that because we already got the latest version of it. So we don't really need to read it. And then we have apply JSON, which is specifically a method that writes to the JSON file. Okay, let's try to see if this will actually work. So shows, and then we create the getter. Hold up, let me check out why everything is so slow. All right, so to get that thing, we just copy this, I guess, and I think what would be a smart decision, see how we have this entire thing here. So paths point to file shows. This gets repeated multiple times in this class because we access it for different reasons, I guess. So let's actually store it in some other place so we can change it just in one place instead of many. So static shows JSON. Yeah, shows JSON. Okay, and shows, oh, this shows JSON. Great. Now we get how we get our JSON. Brilliant. And now the same thing for the setter that we just copy here and change inside brackets. This once again shows JSON. Wait, that's the same thing. Lol, I copied the wrong thing, sorry. I meant to copy this and then boom. Great. So this shows, so you see how the setter actually needs to read some JSON object that we are storing, like in AutoHotkey. If we try to leave it as is, it will try to use the getter, like here. And maybe that's fine, but no, it isn't, because if we try to change this object, we end up doing nothing, because we just stringify the object that we get from the file, from which we didn't write anything. So it would be a bad idea. That simply wouldn't work. So this shows, oh, come on. Here we go. So we write to that file, and my solution will be having a private field that will actually store our entire thing. Okay, and that will be so shows will be an object. We can leave it unset. I know, actually. Let's do this. So the private object of shows will start as being the actual latest JSON. So this should in theory work as expected. So since this is static, the first time like this class appears in the namespace of AutoHotkey, we'll get like the latest JSON file by essentially calling this. But then we can just change it to whatever we want. Okay, that seems like a good start, or rather a good change. And now we don't need these anymore. We'll need to update pretty much everything after this. Okay, so create blank show. This is a method that, okay, let's go actually to the file. So right now I can easily update like the episode, the downloaded, the link, and so on. But what if I don't have a show that I'm trying to set the episode off? Well, in that case, you will need to create a blank show. So like by default, 0 downloaded, 0 episode, no link, and I guess still a timestamp. This doesn't have it because the idea of the timestamp wasn't implemented until some time. So that creates an empty object. I think that should be all fine, but we will change some things. First of all, I like this formatting of the map, where we have the key and value both on the same line and then moving to a different line. That wasn't supposed to be there. Okay, and that should be it. Let's create the, actually, no, we don't need to. Here we go. So it starts out being episode 0, no link, no downloaded, but the timestamp of essentially creation in this case. Okay, so are we actually changing something that we can change? This shows set. That's interesting. Okay. Since we're changing something, essentially setting to the shows, it's not necessarily... So first we actually need to change this object and only then write file. So I think apply JSON is still an idea that should be here. That is true. Because if you write too many times in some period of time, you risk not writing anything or losing some data, which is incredibly annoying. So, okay, Okay, let's delete this, and this underscore shows is value. Okay, so we set it to that. Now I am not sure. You see, there's now an annoyance with the fact that this getter doesn't actually get our field. And in that case, why do we even have a property? So I guess we shouldn't actually have it, but should get the methods for updating stuff. So let's actually change the way we are doing things here. So get JSON will be, actually, we don't need to make it like a full function, we can just use an arrow function instead. So get JSON will be this little thing. And once again, we're using this path in everywhere else, and if I ever need to change it, I can just do it in one place, which is absolutely brilliant. Removes a lot of coupling in terms of naming. So we have get JSON and apply JSON. I don't use the word set here because what we're really doing is applying JSON by writing to the file. And now, boom, we stringify what? Well, now we just stringify this object. Brilliant. Okay, yeah, that makes sense, honestly. So get JSON, same idea, but I do think it's going to be easier to work with, and it makes more sense to have those as functions. Okay, so now we're just changing the object that is the JSON. We change it. However, what this method now also has to do is use apply JSON. That is false. That is false because usually this method isn't called by itself. It's in context with other stuff that happens, and then we only use apply JSON once when we actually need it. So create blank show is actually completely fine here and is now more readable because of how I formatted it. Now, validate show. I am not sure if this is needed anymore. So, and this as well. So we'll come back to them once we figure out if we actually need them or not. Okay, get link. First of all, we pass the name of the show. Okay. We pass the name of the show and then check whether we want an episode link or a download link. If not, validate show link, show. Essentially, if we don't have that show, then don't give us anything because, like, what are you even talking about? There was some advice from Alice Story in terms of my registers. Hold up, here they are. To make them non-static for a lot of things. Because I used to call, I used to call validate key in every single method, pretty much. And by having it in the constructor, it's naturally, like, far less repetitive. So I wonder if the same idea applies here. The idea of I don't think so, because every method works in a bit of a different way. See how bloated all of this is? Like, it's kind of hard to get around, in my opinion. I'm sorry if the sound is going to be worse now, but it's just so hot that I opened the window. So I'm looking at get link and then also validate show link and whether I need them anymore. So a recent idea that I implemented, and the reason why I decided to refactor this in the first place, is using choose. It's a video that I made recently. Watch it. But the main idea of the choose function is that you can specify an array, or technically you can specify any amount of parameters, then you choose between those options, and you get the one that you picked. So now when I set episode or set downloaded, instead of typing out the name of the show, all of the shows appear for me to choose. So that is much better. And I can use the same idea for get link. Like, instead of passing the show like this, I can use choose to get my show, and then I won't need to validate show link because that is automatically done by the choose function. Well, more specifically by get shows. It returns an array of all the shows that I have, so for this JSON file it would return Daredevil, One Piece, and The Boys, like 3 strings and an array. Obviously, there's the negative of now you have to use getLink interactively. You cannot use it programmatically, kinda, because you have to choose rather than automatically provide something, for example. However, I understand that I never have a situation where I would need to get a link programmatically. It's always like in the action. Like, I just watched One Piece, for example, and I'm like, episode like 800, boom, and then I will want to choose One Piece in the options that get shown. The reason why I'm not showing you what I'm talking about is because, well, I changed some code and it probably doesn't work already, which is to be expected. So get link. Let's see where it's actually being used. It's used in run, and that's the only place. Okay, that's all right. Okay, I think that's going to be okay to do this. Let's delete that parameter because we don't need it anymore. And the same thing goes for run, and we'll come back to it. Interesting. Oh, yeah, I'm just activating the browser. Makes sense. However, I'm not sure why. Well, hold up. So, every single thing has a link, because the way I start watching a show is, first of all, I set a link. Even if it's like a non-working one, I will still set a link. And then I change my episodes. So essentially, this strange code makes sure that I can run a link even if it's broken. The thing is, it's not really going to be broken. Like, it's strange that I'm going for less safety here, but I realized that, like, I've been using it for a while, and in the shows class, I took care a lot of edge cases that don't actually happen. Let me get a break and come back to you. I'm back. You know, I just realized in image I have a function called trans and proud. It's been written so like long ago. Like, you can see that by how I didn't know how to specify the type in parameter hints. Like, I was an egg this entire fucking time. As time goes, I'm realizing more and more that, yeah, I was trans all this time, but I just didn't realize. So, coming back to this, run will only need to use browser run link, which is something that I've had for a while, and we don't really need this fucked up structure because I'm not going to have a fucked up link. That's a thing. If you're making something for a user, yeah, definitely you should make things as safe as possible. But also, if you're doing things just for yourself, I think it can be okay to remove safety for easier maintainability, if you understand that the issue that I fixed will never fucking happen. So this is essentially what I'm doing, because right now, as it is, this class is pretty difficult to work with, or at least in my head, it's kind of cryptic. So, like, keep in mind, I'm pretty much making it worse, but better for myself. So, this is not necessarily a tutorial of how you should be doing things, but yeah. But it's something that can happen. So I wonder if what are your thoughts on this kind of change? Basically, kind of making your class worse, but easier to work with, like more maintainable, more easily changeable, and more for you. So get link uses validate show link. And how many times do we use that? Only there. We only need that there. Interesting, meaning that I don't actually need this anymore, because I also don't need this. And instead, what I should get, so how we get the show is choose, then this get shows, and then that, and then if not show, return. So this thing actually happens quite often. Let's see what actions even exist. Sometimes I will finish shows by specifying the name of the show, meaning that the idea of, oh, just put it in the constructor doesn't actually work, because sometimes I don't pick a show that I have because I don't have it. However, repetition is something that I obviously don't like. However, making an abstraction for this isn't necessarily useful. I don't think it is. So choose this get shows. Yeah, honestly, it's fine, I think. So, we got the show, and then we return the proper link, and that's all we need to have get link. Now, it's once again used in only one place, and now because you can't specify the name of the show, you can't really use this as a public method. At least, good luck trying to do so. However, what if instead we still provide a way to use this by being able to specify the show, and then we choose how we get it here in the run method? That doesn't sound too bad. However, it's good, actually, very much so. But when will I ever need it aside from run? The only reason I would ever need a full link is because I want to run it. Thing is, it's better, but I understand that it's easier for me to have it like this, rather than specifying the show here in the run method. So actually, no, I'm not going to make it better. GetLink is now done, and I will actually move it to the end of the file to mean that it's now private. So cool. Progress type is episode by default, but can also be downloaded. We get the show dynamically and get the show link. Perfect. Get shows. I wonder if we can have this in a more reasonable way, you know? So shows in this shows. How do we... Oh, we did. I see why. Because this is not static. Let's actually go through every method and make it static, because that's how we roll now. Damn, I love Vim so much. Like, it makes doing things like adding static to everything much easier. It's brilliant, honestly. And now my suggestions should get better. And also here and here. Coming back, let's actually commit this. Shows everything is static. Great. Now, validate show. We'll wonder... Wait, hold up. Yeah, we also don't need this, I'm pretty sure. But if we do, we can just hover over this with our mouse and bring the change back, which is the reason why you should commit pretty often to make a better use of this feature. That's not the only reason though. So get shows, you know, I really hate having functions that could be properties and that make sense to be properties. So let's actually make this a property. So shows is a JSON object. Shows array maybe could be the name. Okay. And since we only use it for choose, we can implement the star immediately. No, I don't think we can. I don't think it works like that. Yeah, it doesn't. But that's okay. So instead of having a method that returns an array of, well, strings, we can just have a property. So let's name it shows array, delete these, and we're pretty much done. Almost. Get dd. Brilliant, and we're here. And we don't need to set it, which is why we don't have a setter. Okay, now about semantics. I use a lowercase letter first for fields and properties if you're not supposed to change them. So if doing something like shows JSON equals, I don't know, 0, if you're not supposed to do this, it starts with a lowercase letter. But if you can change something like this, then it starts with an uppercase letter. That's how I do it. So shows JSON, you can actually, if you wanted to, you absolutely can. You're not really supposed to, but I don't see why you couldn't. So, oh god damn it. I kinda expected it to work automatically. Well, there are not that many, so it's okay. You're not really supposed to. I mean, if you have the JSON somehow, then you can. And for the shows array, yeah, shows array you should not ever change yourself, because you should instead change the JSON object if that's what you're doing. So that it actually makes sense to have a lowercase letter, but once again, for shows, as in the JSON object, if you just so happen to have the JSON object that you want, then you shouldn't use it, and you should have used the methods that I provide. So yeah, still it's gonna have a lowercase letter. These semantics can matter, I feel like, for consistency of a project, so I try to make them pretty consistent, at least as far as I can. So shows array, where do we use it? So let's search for get shows and change it to Oh, I pressed D, hold up. Shows array, and change this as well. Okay, let's do it a bit differently. Shows array, and now I can just press dots to redo that action. Great, now we're using a property, because functions and methods are actions, and fields are and properties are things. What I'm trying to get there is a thing, not an action. So create blank show. You won't ever call this outside of this class. You're not supposed to, and by itself it doesn't really do anything. So you shouldn't like use it, meaning that it's private as well. So let's correct it in the only place it exists. That actually makes it easier to like refactor things. Okay, so here we have get link, which yeah, indeed I think should be a separate thing. Okay, let's commit shows add, okay, shows array method to property. Should I be, no, it doesn't really matter. Okay, great. Now we finally got to run. So what do we need to do here? First of all, we delete this argument, delete this parameter. By the way, if you didn't know, it's something that I realized somewhat recently. A parameter is something that is in the definition of a function. An argument is what you pass into that function. It's really that simple. That's the difference. So go get a job now, because that's apparently a question that gets asked on job interviews. Just kind of wild, like, seems to me like it's useless semantics. Two very similar words, which, like, I don't see you needing to know. But it's cool to know the difference nevertheless. So everything inside of this function, I thought it worked differently. Alright, so let's do browser run link, and now we need to specify the link. This get link, and we just specify the progress type, and here we go, and it can be blank. Yeah, that seems like literally everything that we need, and it's like surprisingly small, like strangely so, I would say. Oh, hell yeah, I have a macro that turns normal functions that have only one line of code into arrow functions. And the same thing I can do the opposite way. I love it, honestly. So run is now a very simple single line function. Let's actually go and implement how I'm using it. So that is show and down. Show and down let me either run the link to a show that I'm already watching, and down lets me go to the episode that I have downloaded +1 of, once again, a show that I already have. So there is no need for me to be able to specify anything else that is not in this file, meaning that I don't have to have this in my regex section of the runner, and it can instead just be static. So let's paste them here, do a gaip. Okay, so show, we no longer specify any parameters. I wonder what will happen if I do this. Exactly what I think it does, huh? So what's the parameter here? What? I wonder if I do. I was wondering if I included shows. I did, so I wonder why the parameter hints has 3 of them. Huh. Don't you realize the instance that I'm using here? It doesn't because I'm no longer using instances. That's actually a very good point. So, nice catch, I think. Here we go. And now let's go to the other places that have shows to also delete the brackets because we are no longer needing to create an instance. Okay. Great. So, shows, delete show. We'll come back to it because right now we're working on run. So by default, we specify the progress type. If it's nothing, it's episode, but I might as well specify it explicitly. Talking is difficult, honestly. And then download it. So now it's very clear and obvious what's happening here. Okay, once again, I'm taking a break because taking breaks is actually very important when you're working. I recommend doing so. You know, I could do this differently where I like sit down and essentially force myself to fully record a very long video, but taking breaks is immensely important for your focus, first of all. So the way I program now is I program for 20 minutes and I completely focus on the thing that I'm doing. If somebody like texts me or any other distraction, I just move it away, like whatever, it's not the time. When I will have time, I can go back to it. And then after those 20 minutes, I have a 5-minute break where I can either like reply or whatever, but if I don't, it's quite important to make yourself bored. Essentially just waltz around the room without a good understanding of what to do. To let your brain actually rest instead of waiting for those 5 minutes to immediately pull out your phone. And then your focus is immense. After I started doing this, programming things has become far easier. So now we have show and down for downloaded, and they should work in theory. Once again, we'll test everything at the end once we are done refactoring this thing. It will actually probably take a long time, but that's okay. Now, delete show. What's actually happening here? We can, if we want to, provide a show here. I see that this makes no sense. Like, why would we provide a show to delete from the JSON object? Like, that's very important. So let's not. At first I thought it was some genius strategy, but no, that was just a mistake. So is dropped. Let's go to consumed. I can drop things instead of actually finishing them. So, okay. If we didn't choose a show and choose, let me re-show how it works. So cheese and pasta pelmeni. Let's run this and let's uninclude this. We see the 3 choices that we specified here, but we also have a blank info. And if we choose that, choose will return an empty string. So essentially that. And an empty string is false, meaning that if the show variable that we got is false, then don't do anything. Great. Essentially giving you an ability to try to delete something and then realize that, oh, no, actually I don't want to. Okay, then we try to delete that show. We don't need the try anymore because we are guaranteed to get a show that does exist. That used to not be the case. So we just delete it from the shows object, which is correct, at least should be. However, now I realize that this thing happens on download. Okay, I know what to do, and we'll do it later. Actually, apply JSON. I know. Every time that we apply JSON, oh, that's interesting. So every time we actually change the JSON, that's when we need to update shows. And since it's static, it will remember itself. Get JSON isn't really useful aside from this single one use. That's interesting actually. A bit of a bad practice, I know. But yeah, this lets us do two things at once. Basically provide better behavior without breaking anything. So this shows this get JSON. Ooh, actually I know. Let's make shows JSON a property that has this thing. I know it's a lot of semantics that I'm thinking of here, but all of that concludes into something very nice. Shows JSON path, and now we path, and here. Oh, and that's the only 3 places that have it. Okay, and now static shows JSON. You can indeed set this and get this, and that's kind of what you're supposed to do. So a capital letter here. Get, the getter can be a single line because that is just JSON parse and so on. But the setter can't be an arrow function. Okay, we don't need get JSON anymore. We don't need apply JSON. Let's paste this. And value. This can be this shows JSON. A rare case where that's the case. Shows JSON path, JSON stringify, this shows, and that now works as we expected. And yeah, this seems brilliant actually. Yeah, I actually like it quite a lot. That's the thing? Hold up. We don't really need to set a value. We're not really using a value here. Usually in setters, you're supposed to provide a value that you then do whatever with. But we already changed the object that we need, so we don't need to provide the value here. Yeah, turns out having apply and get JSON is a bit of a better idea. But if you don't try, you don't come to know. Interesting how this entire thing is longer in terms of characters than paths point to file like shows. But that's okay because we have VS Code that autocompletes stuff. Okay, so we have get JSON, which really should be a private function because it's only used here and here. And for that reason, I'm gonna make it a private function. I was thinking of not doing it because it's kind of like closer and nicer, but that shouldn't be the reason to make it less consistent, you know? So now it's consistent. The only thing that we could be using is apply JSON, and every time that we use apply JSON, we apply the changes to the object that we use. Great. Now I just have to hope for now I just have to hope for the fact that we can indeed write the file and then actually read its updated version like fast enough, if the JSON library I'm using can handle it. Well, yeah, it's just a matter of hope. Now, delete show. If we don't get a show, that's okay, but if we do, we get a show. Now, we delete the show. Apply JSON, that also applies our hold up. The only way that we can change the shows object is by doing it, well, here in this class. So every single change that we do to this object, well, that is exactly what we end up writing. We don't need to update it because it's static. Who would have known? Yeah, that makes sense. I just kind of expected this to need to be updated, but it doesn't really need to. Okay, good. So we delete and apply JSON. That actually writes to the file. Now, delete write consumed. You can see how cramped this is. So since this is a private method, we actually pass things here instead of like getting them dynamically. And since we already got our show, we can pass it. Same thing goes for is dropped. Like, we already passed it at least once, so we might as well bring it down along the chain. So, okay. Here we get the date string. If we look at consumed, we can see that, well, almost everything has it. Perfect. And then if I specifically dropped it, then it specifies it. Now I wonder, show to title. I missed something. I need a space here. That's actually a good catch. Great, and append file. Now, big question. Do we use this path in more than one place? We do. Meaning that we should abstract it away. Okay. Okay, so let's call it this consumed path. Okay, yeah, that works. And let's go here and create a new static consumed path, and paste. Wait, that's not it. Oh, god damn it. I can just retype it. I made a like remap where C no longer copies to the default register, so I tried to go around it, but turns out it was actually useful sometimes. So I'll try to bring it back. Okay, so consumed path is consumed. Yeah, that should be it. And I specified it in both places where it's used. And now, same thing here, but we already have it. So this JSON shows JSON path. Perfect. So these two methods are only ever used together. I'm not gonna just write without also pushing it, or at least committing it. So I could combine them together where they are the same thing, but it's better to have one method do only one thing, which is why I don't. Instead, what we can do is create an abstraction called operate consumed, which will get show and is dropped and call this write consumed by specifying the show and is dropped, as well as this push consumed, also specifying the same parameters. So now we can just use operate consumed, but when I want to change something, I will know whether I want to change it in the committing part or the writing to the file part. But I can just call the same thing. So let's go back to, what is it even called? What were we working on? I don't remember. We're working on delete show. So, okay. So is dropped will be something no matter if I specify it or not. So we can actually remove the optional parameters in the functions below. So this operate consumed show, because we will get it, that is guaranteed to us, and is dropped. Okay, operate consumed. Let's go here, and we don't need those, as well as here. Now I forgot what we're working on again. Delete show, right? So we apply JSON by writing to the file. I feel like write JSON used to do something different. No, it didn't. I got confused. So we delete the show from this file because we are deleting a show that I'm currently watching. And then also we need to write that JSON that we just changed. Makes sense. But then we also write to this file. So that's what's happening here. We write to two files, essentially moving one thing into another file. Okay, validate set input. Let's do this thing again where we check how many times I use it. I use it 3 times. So it's an abstraction to check whether the regex that I provide is actually correct. So first of all, we compress spaces, very important, meaning that I can do like episode, a billion spaces, and then whatever. I don't usually do it, but if I do it by mistake, it's completely fine. So that's nice. So we regex match. If it can't find it, then it returns false. But if it can, it returns the match. Yeah, it moves some logic out of the methods. So I think it's a good idea to keep it. However, it should be private. So let's update it as such. It would be so cool if HK just had private and public things, or at least like by default it's public, but you can specify private. That would be so good for the hotkey to restrict you from like using things that are private. Okay, so get JSON, get link. I guess it should be here. Brilliant. So delete show is all right. Set link. Show and link. So set link is pretty much the only thing that I do still need to specify both things in. I specified the name of the show, and then I specified the link, which is why it's called show and link. We split them into two. Basically, we check whether I actually passed the link or not. And if I didn't, it does nothing. But if I did, we get show and link that we then get. Great. Validate show. If I remember correctly, this doesn't exist anymore. Indeed. So, interesting. So essentially, instead of validate show, what we can do is if this shows has show that So essentially what's happening here, you know what, instead of only being able to type out the show's name to set a link, I should split them into two, where I can either pick a show which link I want to update, or create a new show that I'm watching to set a link to it. But you know what? That I'm going to do in the next episode, if I record it. Honestly, can't promise it, but yeah, there's still a lot of things to do here. So if you're interested to see a sequel, press a like, type some comment, maybe you have a question or a suggestion. Definitely subscribe so you don't miss my content, but most importantly, stay fresh, cheese bags, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye!